Hey, it's Meg. Welcome back to my channel. So in today's journal with me, I have a week of journaling for you. I thought it would be fun to do weekly roundups of the journaling that I've been doing for the Messy May challenge, which if you haven't seen, I'll pop the prompts up on the screen here and leave all the information down below if you want to join in. So I'm doing days 1 through to 5 in this video because that kind of fits with the first week for this video. So I'll be uploading every Sunday if you want to come back and see what I've been creating each week throughout the month of May. So as I said, this is day 1 that we're doing. So the prompt was Prologue. And the fun thing about the Messy May prompts is there's like a fuller prompt that goes along with it as well, if you see on their Instagram. So the Prologue prompt was actually introduce yourself to your journal, provide background information on the main character, you, and a summary of the glorious sequence of events that led you to this moment here right now. So that wasn't something that I really wanted to do, as you'll see with the spread that I created. So I tried to focus on the prologue as just a way of starting this journal and sort of getting over that blank page fear, because working in this plain journal, having worked in lots of junk journals for a few years now, it's been a while since I've worked in a plain journal, and so it's kind of interesting getting back into that habit of working on backgrounds and sort of where to start with a page when I don't have anything to respond to. So this was definitely a page of trying to find my feet in this journal, figure out what sort of style I wanted to do. I wanted to bring a bit more of a painty, like mixed media feel to this, but I'll be honest with you, as I was putting this Payne's Grey acrylic paint onto the page, it was definitely one of those moments where it looked like a good idea in my head, and then when I actually started doing it on the page, I was like, literally, what am I doing? Like, I really didn't like it. And I was kind of panicking a little bit because obviously I had like the camera rolling, filming it, and I was like, right, I've got to come up with a way of trying to salvage the just mess of Payne's Grey that I had on the page. I really wasn't liking it, so I was just sort of like outlining here the botanical illustration that I'd put on the page just as a way to buy myself some time essentially, and just to see how I could make it look a little bit more interesting and try and combine the two, because I think what was happening was there was so much of a clash between that image, that collage, and then this really dark paint that looked a little bit messy, to be honest, and shapeless, which I know I should like keep in the back of my mind that I'm going to add stuff to this, and it's just a base. So I decided to come in with some white acrylic paint. I thought maybe this can like help to salvage the mess that I've created. So it definitely did help to dull it down a little bit and add a bit more contrast and interest. And I think having the white paint splotches there that sort of carried over into the white page, I think helped to create a little bit of depth on the page, and maybe that's what I was missing as I was originally adding the first layer of paint. But I will admit it was very scary, and especially because this was like my first page as well, it was like I really did have that thing of, you want the first page to look really good, and I thought, oh no, I've made a right mess here, and what am I going to do? And I was thinking about the papers that I had in my stash, because I was like, maybe I need to go back to my safe place of collage to cover this up. But I am really trying to push myself a little bit creatively here and not rely so heavily on the collage, because that is something that I think is a bit of like a comfort blanket for me when it comes to creating, is that if I don't know what to do, I'll just do some collaging. I know that that's like a safe place for me, because I tend to like what I create with that, but I really do want to learn new techniques and try different things within this journal. So I think as we go through this, you'll see there's definitely things that I try that are new. There's things that look a very interesting choice, shall we say. But I think that's part and parcel of these daily challenges, is sort of just showing up and seeing what you create. And there's no like huge pressure really. Like I know there's no pressure to create an absolute masterpiece when I'm working in this journal. But still, I was really struggling a little bit with that. So you'll see here, I'm adding some collage to this page, and I was just thinking, oh, like a sigh of relief. I thought, okay, I can see sort of where this is going now that I'd covered up a bit more of the Payne's grey. I think it just felt a little bit too much. So covering it with that collage and then coming in with some white pen and also some little bits of collage. So this is like some sewing paper and some matte paper just to create a little bit more interest around the contents piece that I'd cut out. So I'd cut that out with the thinking of Prologue and it being like the start of the journal. And then I thought maybe I'll do some fussy cutting and add a little bit of pink to this as well, because it was feeling a little bit monochrome, like I was using lots of neutrals and blues. It was feeling quite cool toned, and so I wanted to add some pink because I feel like I really do love using pink tones within my journal pages. And I think after getting myself so worked up about the Payne's grey, it was quite nice to do something a little bit more therapeutic. I love fussy cutting and it has such a good payoff when added to your journal pages. So I decided to add it on the left hand side there, and it really bridged that gap between the paint and the collage on the right hand side and then that image on the left hand side, which I actually really like the look of, the way that it's almost like torn on the vellum, and it feels like we're sort of leading into the journal. So I do really like the effect that that gave, and so it was nice to be able to sort of have that overlap and really create that more seamless effect into the journal page on the right hand side. And then I decided to add a little bit of interest with this stamp, and I didn't do like a clear stamp. I almost used it as a way to do a bit of mark making on my page. And then I came in with my white paint marker and added a quote into that gap there, which I thought really helped to add that contrast and fill in the rest of that paint and give it a bit more purpose on the page. So the quote that I just chose was "What's past is prologue," which fits in with the theme of this page. And once I'd added this quote, I was actually quite pleased with the final result, which is quite funny considering how much of a journey this page was. But I think it kind of shows that sometimes you have to just not give up and keep going with a page and just see where it takes you. I also decided to add a few little scribbles here and there with my Neo colour, and I just love doing this as a little finishing touch to a page. So for day 2, the prompt was Nourish, and the fuller version was how can you use this dailyish challenge to nourish yourself and your creative practice, setting yourself up for success with a ready to go supply kit and creative space. And I thought that was a really interesting way to look at that prompt. And whilst I didn't end up spending time, looking at a kit necessarily, I did try to think about the supplies that I was wanting to use in this journal. So I was pulling out my collage, adding a bit of paint, and so I kind of looked at it that way. I added in a couple of my favourite washi tapes as well into this page. I kept it really simple, adding some stamping and things like that. And I did actually look up the word nourish just for the definition and also to find a couple of quotes because I thought I might want to use that in my page. I ended up not using them, but I just thought it was a really nice way to be able to explore the prompt a little bit wider. So the quote that I pulled out there on the left was take chances, make mistakes, that's how you grow. Pain nourishes your courage. You have to fail in order to practice being brave. And that's Mary Tyler Moore. And I thought that was a really nice quote to use in a future journal page. I didn't end up using it in this one, but I think it's a really nice sentiment to think about as I was creating this page. And sometimes that's all the prompts need to be, just something to get me started, and I'll just take it as a little bit of a starting off point and using it as a spark for creating whatever it is that I do in my page. So I don't always do like a literal interpretation of the prompts, and I think that's a really fun way to approach them sometimes. So I did come in with my washi tapes here and add a few pink ones as a bit of a finishing touch, and also to add some texture as well. So when I added them, I kind of crinkled them slightly, which added a really nice effect, I think, to the page and helped to finish it off and give it a little bit of pop of colour as well. Okay, so for day 3, the prompt was Enchanted. And the explanation was simply create from a place of whimsical magic. So this is one of those prompts that's a little bit more vague, and I will admit when I first sat down to do this, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I was thinking maybe like a sort of forest, whimsical, magical vibe, but then I really wasn't sure how I was going to pull that off within my journal. So when I'm not sure, I just default to just seeing what I can create background wise and then including a quote that speaks to the prompt. And so I ended up going for this collage that was neutral, a little bit like scrappy with all of the different torn edges, and it was really fun to actually work on just a pocket element for this. I was actually debating whether to use the page underneath for this, because in the video I watched of the creator who was sort of the lead on this prompt. That was Vanessa Oliver Lloyd. She'd cut out the middle of a pocket like this, and I thought, oh, that's a cool idea, but then I never actually ended up doing it. So it's definitely something I want to try on a future page. But after I'd collaged onto the front of the pocket, I decided, well, I need to make something to go inside the pocket. So I used a postcard and I backed that onto some scrapbook paper that I really liked the colour and pattern of. And then I actually upcycled a old tag from another journal that I was sort of getting rid of. So if I'm not really feeling the journal anymore, I'll sort of take the bits that I want to keep from it and then just recycle the rest. And that way I'm able to then use it in a new way in this journal. So I don't know if that's something you do. I know some people probably are a little bit shocked that I'm tearing stuff out from older journals, but that's just the way that I like to use some of my material sometimes, is to just take bits from older work and sort of bring it through into my pages that I'm working on currently. So this is a piece of PET tape that I'm adding on to fill in one of the gaps on that tag, and then I just decided to add a bit more washi tape here to sort of bridge the gap of the edge of this pocket here. It's just a pink star one, and then I'm adding my quote here with my Tombow marker, and you can't quite see it very clearly. I mean, you can in person, but it's not showing up very well on camera here, the lettering, because the background is a little bit busy. So I'm thinking maybe I should have used like some watered down white acrylic paint or something just to push back some of that ledger paper writing, but I did really like the effect of that. So I guess that's something I've learned here as I was adding the quote onto the page. But obviously once I'd written onto it, it was too late then to really do anything about it. So I just decided to carry on with it and add this quote to the page. And I do think it works really nicely with the contrast there, with the black that I added on the right hand corner there at the top. And then I just underlined some of the words with my white paint marker and then added some little dots, of course, because I love to add those as finishing touches on all my pages. And then finally I stamped the date because I realised I haven't used my date stamp in a really long time. So I wanted to add that onto the page as well, and this was the finished result for day 3 of Enchanted. So up next is day 4, and I think this is actually one of my favourite pages from this week, and it was for the prompt of blooming. So the fuller prompt was: practice a messy type of mixed media floral to use as a background or to border your pages, images, or anything else you can think of. Let the beauty of the florals inspire you with both loose lines and subtle colours. So in the video that the creator did, Ramona Samuels, she started off with a base of like magazine images or like book pages. So I decided to grab my gardening books and pull out some pictures of cherry blossoms and other flowers that I could use within this page. And then I added some very subtle paint once I'd got the collage together, and I really like the way that this turned out. It was a really like quick and simple page to do, but I think it also had a really nice effect. So I decided to go for a image that had a really nice payoff and use that as the entire background of my page, because I was wondering like how can I use the image in the most impactful way. So I just decided to cover the entire page when it came to the cherry blossom. And then I added a few of these cut out flowers here to the page as well, just for some contrast and also to add a bit more of a focal point, because the image of the cherry blossom that I had chosen didn't really have like a distinctive like focal point. It was just like an entire image of the cherry blossom, so it really worked well as a background element. So then I needed these flowers just to have something to anchor my text to when it came to adding that onto the page as well. I really loved using my typewriter to add the text for this page. I think it gave a really nice effect, and then also using this pale pink paint here for the marks that were sort of mimicking the cherry blossom, which I thought was a really cool effect to include within the page and something that I took from the prompt for the day. So I really enjoyed working on this page, and I think this kind of had that nice blend of collage but like a tiny bit of mixed media, and I think I was really enjoying the way that it was turning out. It didn't feel like too far away from what I normally do, but it was still a little bit more pushing me out of my comfort zone with a bit more of the paint aspect of it. And then I also found this gold heart here, so I just decided to add it onto the page for a little bit of shine and sparkle. I actually had a lot of fun for the day 5 prompt, which was quite simple, really, but it really gave me the opportunity, I think, to experiment and just to create a page that had so much texture. So the prompt was simply marks, and the fuller version was marks and mark making can be just the start we need and a great way to get our feelings out. So I really like mark making in my journals because of how expressive it can feel. And so I wanted to start off by creating a base for this page that was quite textural and then would allow me to add the interest with my mark making. So there was kind of two stages to creating this page. So I got my gel matte medium out because I wanted to glue down some sort of book papers and different scraps for a base here. Now, to me, this feels very like OG art journaling, like the classic building up a background. It's not something I tend to do a lot of because my pages in my junk journals, as I was saying, already have that base of different collage papers. So it was actually quite fun to do a technique like this. So I was gluing them down, making sure all the edges were nice and secure. And I was using different tones of papers here to add the different interests. So I didn't end up covering the entire spread, as you'll see. I concentrated on the center and just added some larger pieces to the page. And I think as well, as I've been going through this week of journaling, it's been really interesting working in a larger journal because I tend to work in something that's, around like an A6 size, and this is an A5 journal. So I found it quite funny to work in because I wasn't used to all of the space. So I think in one way that's why I didn't end up filling the entire of this page with collage, because I'm not used to working on a larger journal. So let me know, what size journal do you typically work on? Are you an A5 person or are you an A6 lover like I am? So I definitely love my smaller journals, but I think this is a good opportunity to work with a little bit more space here and see what I can include. So after I'd glued down my papers, I then came in with some white acrylic paint to start adding my layers, start building up the different texture and dimension that I wanted for this page. So I was pushing back some of the areas. I was also trying to blend them in at the edges with the white background of the paper. And then I came in with some coffee. I love to add this to any sort of papers really, but I think it helped to give everything a little bit more of a cohesive look here, because obviously this was like stark white in terms of the page. So I really wanted to add that more vintage and aged effect to this page. So I'm just adding the coffee in different areas. Sometimes I'm focusing on the edges or letting it puddle up in different areas, and then I dried that so that I was then able to come in with the next layers that I was working on. And I was really just trying to focus on one layer at a time and then seeing what I needed to add to the journal page and almost letting it tell me what was next in this process. So I didn't really have a plan in mind when it came to the composition of this spread. So after I had dried the coffee, I decided to add this beautiful floral napkin. So I was separating the layers here, which is an easy way to have a more like translucent effect when it comes to using a napkin in your journals. And so I'm just tearing it gently here to get the sections of the pattern that I wanted. So I have nothing against the bees, but I didn't really want them on my journal page, so I was trying to avoid them and focus more on the flowers that were on this napkin. So that's why you'll see me sort of gently tearing certain sections, because I just wanted to focus on the floral pattern for this. And I ended up tearing off a piece that didn't like cover the whole entire page. I really wanted to have something that was just in certain areas, and with the way that a napkin sort of blends into the page, I think that this was quite an effective way to include the pattern but then still have pieces showing through on the page as well. So you'll see the text that shows through underneath, and it just really melts into the page as I'm adding the gel matte medium here onto the napkin. I really love the vibrancy of the colours of this, and I think it contrasts really nicely with the vintage base that I included on the page. And so I'm just making sure to press down on all of the different areas here to make it nice and secure, but I do think it adds really nice texture as well to the page. So for my mark making, I used a range of different materials. So I had some coloured pencils. I also had that green pastel pencil, which had a really nice effect on the page. It was a little bit smudgy. I also used my white paint pen, and then here I'm just using a Unipin fine liner in black and tracing a stencil here to add some contrast, and then also something that felt a little bit more structured on a page that otherwise had a lot of abstract mark making on it. And then I just decided to add this little sticker here on top of a scrappy collage to sort of give a little bit of a focal point, but it's quite small on the page, so it's just a nice little detail, I think, amongst all of the abstract texture and colour that I've got going on this page. So I just decided to outline it here with some black and white sort of circular marks there, just to help it to stand out on the page. So that's the fifth and final page that I created for my week of journaling with Messy May. I hope you enjoyed joining me for this process, and I'll see you guys next week for another week of journaling. Bye guys!